afternoon, pilot teachers, and good afternoon, students. Thank you. Sit down. Okay, today we will be actually moving on to looking at population now, and that population is the second last subtopic that we are going to look at on the case study of Java. The last subtopic that we will look at later on will be on urbanization. So now we are on the topic of population. We are going to go through the information on page 13, 14, and 15 of our booklet for the work on population in our lesson today. There are a couple of activities or exercises that we are also going to work on, and we are going to go through the readings so that we understand what is actually presented on population of Indonesia on those pages. Okay, we'll go straight ahead now to looking at information on page 13 and activities or exercises that we'll need to complete after each section or each part of the readings. Population of Indonesia. From what we have already discussed and from perhaps what we have collected and maybe made note of from the internet, the latest population of Indonesia is 228 million people. But for our calculations and for what we are going to work on, we are going to base our calculations and information on what is presented in this booklet. So when we look at the population, we are going to actually look at the population being 180 million, and that was for 1990. And using that information, we should be able to calculate population density. From the information, it tells us here that Indonesia has a very large population. In 1990, there were more than 180 million people, 60% of whom live on the island that we are basing our case study on, and that is Java. There are about 8.2 million people living in Jakarta. And Jakarta is the capital city of Indonesia. And when we look at the 8.2 million people living in the city Jakarta, that is twice as many people as there are in the whole of Papua New Guinea. And that statement or information is there on page 13 of our booklet. Let's see if we can answer that first question quickly according to the information that we have looked at. How many million people live on Java? Do your calculations quickly and have your answers written for that question. The first one, according to the statement that we have just looked at, about how many million people live on Java? Okay, anyone with an answer? Shelley, an answer? About how many million people live on Java, according to the statement? Okay, look at the statement quickly and then see if you can work out. Bill, your answer?
It's about 108 million people.
Okay, very good. Would you like to also explain to us how you got 108 million?
60% times 180 million population.
Okay, he's got 60% of the total population of Indonesia, according to this book here, is 180. The statement tells us that 60% of the people in that country live on the island of Java, so he had found out 60% of 180 and he got 108 million. Were the rest of us able to come up with the same answer? Okay, good. So according to that statement above, we now know that on the island Java, there are 108 million people. Also from that statement, we have also found out that in the city, capital city, which is Jakarta, which is also located on that island Java, there are 8.2 million people living in there. And that is twice the number of people living in the whole of Papua New Guinea. Okay, we move on. You will also see on page 14 of your booklet a graph or a table presented. And here it tells us that Indonesia's population is growing very quickly or rapidly. And the graph below, or the graph on the monitor, shows us how Indonesia's population has grown in the last 100 years. You can make reference to page 14 of your booklet that contains this particular pictograph. Okay, looking at the key quickly, the years on that particular graph are given on the left-hand side, and we start from the year 1900 to the year 2000, an interval of 10 years. Then we have one symbol would represent 10 million people. For each of those different years that are given, we have an idea of how many people there were for those years given. Okay, you studied that graph, and I would like you now to complete exercise A, B, and C. And those three exercises are also on page 14 of your booklet. Should not take you long. 5 minutes is plenty of time for you to actually complete that activity. Okay, activity A. What was the population of Indonesia in each of the following years? 1930, 1940, 1950, 1960, 1980, and 1990. You refer to the pictograph for you to be able to answer those questions. Exercise B, we'll come to that. What is the work of counting people called? And exercise C, estimate what the population of Indonesia will be in the year 2000. Again, you'll have to make reference to the pictograph for you to be able to answer those three questions. Okay, we'll correct the first exercise that is looking at the pictograph. What was the population of Indonesia in each of the following years? We start off first with 1930. 1930. Give us your answer for 1930.
$60 million.
We all happy with 60 million? Okay, good. We have three symbols given there. And we know that one symbol represents 10 million people. There's three of them. So in 1930, there are 6 symbols, not 3. 6 symbols. And if one symbol represents 10 million, then obviously the 6 symbols will represent 60 million. Okay, good. For 1930, 60 million. 1940, Shelley.
65 million.
We happy with 65 million? No? Somebody saying no? 65 million? Yes, okay, we're happy with 65 then. That's correct also for 1940. Salesi?
$75 million.
1950, 75 million. We happy with 75 million? Okay. Gideon? 1960?
95 million.
95 million. We happy with 95 million? Yes, okay, good. That's for 1960. 1980 is the next year.
140 million.
Okay, 140 million. And finally, 1990.
180 million.
180 million. Okay. So when this book was actually published and it was written, we were looking at the year 1990. Therefore, we are dealing with the figures for 1990, which is 180 million people. So according to the graph, according to the pictograph, we were able to come up with the answers for those following years that we have been asked to work out the population population of. Okay, let's look at question B. What is the work of counting the population called? Kiran.
National census.
Okay, the work of counting people is known as the national census. We happy with that? Okay, so B, it's census. Okay, census is the work of counting people. The type of census that can actually be carried out can be of two types. Our census can be of two types. Vital registration, whereby every birth, death, and migration is actually registered. And also the nationwide head count, whereby you go to every homes and you count every single head. Where we count every single head in a particular country at a particular time, that is referred to as census, the nationwide national census. Whereas if we are looking at the number of people living in a country by using the updated records of births, deaths, and migration, then that is what we call vital registration. Okay, and in any part of the world, they could use one or the other. In Papua New Guinea, we use the national census, where we go around, or the census people go around and they count the number of people we have in the country at that particular time. Okay, finally, C. If we look at exercise C, you are asked to estimate what the population of Indonesia will be in the year 2000. Anita.
$200 million.
Okay, 200 million. And we are in the year 2003, and from the information we have already looked at, definitely, the population is already, or has already reached over 200 million. They're looking at 228 million people in Indonesia today. Okay, that concludes the activities that are on page 14 of our booklet. We'll move on. And this time, we are going to also look at what we call population density. When we're dealing with population, it is also important to look at density and distribution of people. When we talk about the population density, we are trying to find out how many people live in 1 square kilometer of land. If we have to calculate the population density of an area or of a country, then it is important we must know the total population of that area or country. We must also know the total land area of that country. Then we get the total population and we put it over the total land area to find the population density. Whatever answer we get, it's going to be the number of people per square kilometer of land. We have a map that perhaps we have already looked at when we were looking at the rice growing areas on Java. And that particular map gives us an idea generally on the density of population of Java or on Java Island. The orange color represents areas having more than 700 people per square kilometer. A square kilometer, if we have to actually maybe look at it in reality, if we have a standard size soccer field or rugby pitch, which is 100 meters by 100 meters by 100 meters by 100 meters, the area then is a square kilometer. So here we are saying that those areas that are in brown or the dark orange color, they have more than 700 people living in a square kilometer, according to that map of Java showing the density. The areas that are in pink color, that's the second symbol or key there, shows us areas with 100 to 700 people per square kilometer. Do you think it is possible to build, say, 700 houses for the 700 people that would be actually living in a square kilometer? It's impossible. How do you think the people might actually be living in an area which is with that number of people per square kilometer? Okay, they need to build high story buildings so that they are living above or on top of each other. The area that is actually in the lighter orange color on the map shows us people between 10 to 100 per square kilometer. The yellow color on the map shows us areas on Java that have between 1 to 10 people per square kilometer. And then the lightest color there shows us people under 1. Maybe 1 or less living in area per square kilometer. But this map here generally shows us the way in, the population density of that island of Java. Also note that when we're looking at population, it is also important to look at distribution of people. There is a difference between density and distribution. Density gives us a description of number of people living per square kilometer of land. In order for us to find that, we need to know the population, and we need to know the total area of that particular area we are calculating the density of. It is also important for us to look at distribution. And when we look at distribution, we are looking at generally the way in which people are spread over the surface of the earth. Around the world, there is a very uneven spread or distribution of population. People tend to live in areas that are more suitable for them, or they find more applicable, or not maybe too difficult or too harsh for them to live in. So if you look at the map of Java, you will also see that there is not an even spread of people. People are unevenly distributed throughout the island. One of the maps that we looked at earlier on saw the rice growing areas on Java. And we found out that a lot of people tend to also live in areas where wet rice cultivation is common. So there are factors that also influences the distribution of the population. For us to also remember the formula for calculating population density, you are required to make note of it. Population density is simply calculated if you are asked to find or to calculate by having the population of an area over the total land area. And if we do the calculations, then we should be able to come up with our answer, people per square kilometer. Let's do an activity or exercise, of which again you will find on page 15 of your booklet. As previously stated, the approximate population of Java in 1990 was 60% of 180 million. The approximate land size of Java is 133,000 square kilometers. Using the formula, population density equals population over total area, you are now required to calculate or work out the population density of Java. Do your calculations into your exercise book. Okay, Elsie, your answer for the population density of Java.
Approximately 812 people per square kilometer.
Okay, so we have approximately 812 people living per square kilometer. Did you all come up with the answer also? Okay, good. So to calculate population density, remember the formula. It's simply population over the area. If we have to find out the population density of Papua New Guinea also, will we be able to calculate the population density? Yes, we should. We find out the total population of the country, and then we find out the total land area or land mass, and we divide the population by the total area. What we are actually calculating here is what we call arithmetic calculation of population density. In reality, when we look at perhaps the island of Java, you are not going to see that for every square kilometer, there is 812 people. Remember I talked about distribution? There is an uneven distribution of people on the island of Java or anywhere else in the world. People tend to live in areas that are more favorable to them. But what we are calculating is to give us an idea that if the population is that many and the total land area is that, then to every square kilometer of land in that area, there would be about that number. And that's what we are calculating, the arithmetic population density. If we want to be a little bit more specific and maybe talk about reality, then what we need to calculate is the physiological population density. What are we finding now here? We are looking at the arable land in a particular area, and we are finding the total population that are able to live using that arable land for their survival. And that could be a little bit more realistic compared to the arithmetic calculation. But in most cases, we are asked to find the arithmetic calculation, so our calculation will be based on what we have looked at as our example. So one can now see that definitely the country Indonesia and perhaps Java is a densely populated island. The words dense and sparse are important when we are describing density. Where we have a lot of people living per square kilometer of land, then we can say that area is densely populated. Where we have less people living per square kilometer of land, then we can say the area is sparsely populated. Because of the fact that there are so many people living on the island of Java, there has to be some solutions or some ways of dealing with the ever-increasing population. Some of the solutions to the population problems occurring in Indonesia, and especially on Java, we are going to look at now, and you're going to find those on page 15 of your booklet. Look at Java. From what we have learned, why has it become so crowded? One, the soil is actually very fertile. Therefore, people need to live where they can be able to cultivate the soil or grow crops for their consumption and survival. Java is so crowded, number two, because it has been for over thousands of years the center of trading routes, and that's what we have already learned from historical Java. And also, number three, Java is so crowded because the interior of the island is easily accessible. The Dutch on Indonesia concentrated their interest and effort on Java, and they ensured that the transport network and system was well established so that it can transport their goods from point A to point B. So what are the possible solutions to Java's immense population problems? Two possible solutions that have been discussed in our book are: one, birth control and family planning, and two, transmigration. We are going to have time to only look at birth control and family planning in our lesson today, and your homework will be note-taking on the information on population Indonesia, as well as the first of the solution now, and that is birth control and family planning. Birth control and family planning. In order for that to actually take place effectively in a country, people need to be educated so that they can understand the reason for why there is a need for birth control and there is a need for family planning. Some reasons why a lot of people, especially in the developing countries, mainly in the rural areas, are reluctant to accept the idea of having less children when we're looking at birth control and family planning are: number one, the more children in the family, the more labor is available. And if you are in a developing country like Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, people live in rural areas, and it is important that the more children that they have, it is going to also help with the labor that they require for the completion of tasks in their families. Another reason for why people in developing countries, Indonesia included, are reluctant to accept family planning and birth controls are when parents get old, they believe that the children will be able to provide for their welfare. Number 3, a lot of people are actually suspicious of new ideas and often reject them. Therefore, education is actually very important. There is also religious beliefs. There are some religions that encourages a lot of children to the family. And also, there is the traditional beliefs that people have. These are some of the problems, or not problems, but some of the reasons for why people sometimes are reluctant to following birth control and family planning methods. Therefore, for your homework, what I would like you to do is I would like you to read the rest of the information which is presented on page 15 of the booklet under the heading on population. And I'd like you also to read ahead to the next way in which Indonesia, especially Indonesia, and how Indonesia is trying to actually solve the problem of a great or bigger population. And the first one is by using the method of birth controls and family planning. And the second one we are going to look at in our next lesson, and that is going to be on transmigration. And your homework is to read through so that you are maybe familiar with some of the information that is presented on page 16, 17, 18, and 19. And with those information also, that will also bring us to the end of our lesson. Class, if you can now stand up. To the pilot teachers, our keyword for lesson 148 is density. Good afternoon and thank you, students.